The night smelled of rain and whiskey, the kind of smell that softened a town's hard edges, cold water on old dust. Lamps burned low along Main Street. Window panes held small squares of gold. Farther out, the desert rested like a black ocean. The Silver Spur kept its doors open to the glow, and the piano slept with one key slightly awake. Gideon Trace stood in the alley behind the saloon, boots quiet, hat pulled low. A scar ran thin along his jaw, the color of a storm line on a far ridge. He watched the back door as if it were a horizon. He did not look like a man waiting for anyone. He looked like a man who had learned how to live with hunger, the kind that did not speak its name. Inside, Lark Hollis counted the till. She moved like a secret, quick, graceful. She tied the apron strings into a neat knot and listened to the hush that follows a long night. Her hands were steady. Most nights they were. Tonight they trembled as if a wind moved through her without touching the air. She pressed her palm to her ribs and breathed slow. Her father had owned this place once. Now the deed wore another name. She stayed because some things refuse to leave, because memory can be a room with one chair and a single flame, because she had promised a woman she would not let the dark win. The promise still lived in her, quiet and fierce as a coal under ash. Lark blew out one lamp, then another. Shadows folded over every table. Cards left behind made pale shapes, small teeth in the dark. The mirror behind the bar held a dim ghost of her face. Black hair, a mouth that tried to be brave, eyes too sharp for easy sleep. She picked up the ledger and turned for the back hall. The door opened to the alley. Rain lifted the scent of creosote and horse. A low thunder grumbled the way old men talk when they do not want to be heard. She stepped out, holding the ledger to her chest. She meant to take the receipts home. She meant to lock the back gate. She meant to think of nothing at all. He stepped out of the deeper dark, not close enough to frighten, close enough to be noticed. Hat, coat, the sense of a body that had been through long miles. He did not smile. He tipped his brim and let her see his eyes. Steady, grey, like river stone under clear water. She did not gasp. She did not turn back. She stood in the seam between lamplight and rain and watched him the way a wild horse watches an open hand. He felt it, that careful weight of her gaze. He had been measured by many things: guns, hunger, distance, never by eyes like hers. "You should go home," she said. "The street is mean when it gets wet." "I know," he said, voice low, a warmth that did not crowd. "I had business." What kind of business keeps to alleys? The quiet kind, the kind that stays alive. Her mouth wanted to soften. She would not let it. She looked past him down the alley that ran like a black vein behind the town. A lantern far off made a pool of light. Rain braided the space between. She felt the ache of a question rising and pushed it down. People asked too much in this town. Answers were worse. He shifted his weight. Not a threat, a confession. "I did not come for trouble," he said. "Then why did you wait for me? Because you lock that door alone every night." The ledger felt heavy. Her fingers bit into the leather. "You were watching me. I was making sure you got through the dark." Something in her steadied. It made her angry and kind at the same time. "I do not need a guardian, Mr. Alley. If men want to find me, they knock on the front and leave with an empty pocket." He almost smiled. Not at her. At the shape of her courage. "Gideon," he said. "Gideon Trace." Names had a weight in the West. She let his fall into the dust between them. "I did not ask. No, you did not." But then she whispered, against her own rule, because the rain felt like it was saying, "Please, Lark, Lark Hollis." His eyes changed, the way a sky changes when a cloud moves aside and leaves one star clear. "Lark," he said, as if the word had once been a bird on his palm. A gust pushed rain under the eaves. The thin fabric of her blouse chilled against her skin. She tucked the ledger tighter and took one step toward the door. He stood still, but something in him leaned closer. Not his body, his attention. She felt it like heat from a banked fire. "I know who you are," she said. "You came in 3 nights ago and sat with your back to the wall. You never touched the whiskey. You watched the room. You paid in coins rubbed smooth." He lifted a shoulder. Habit. Habit or fear. Both keep a man breathing. What he did not know was that she could hear fear when it wore boots. It had a rhythm. It hurried the breath on the second beat. His did not. His ran slow and sure, like a river that had learned how to hide under stone. That steadiness called to something lonely in her. It made her feel seen. It made her angry again. "If you are here to warn me," she said, "save it for the men who cannot read a room. I am here because a man with a black hat asked about you at dawn. He said your name without any softness in it. He said it like a debt. I am here because I know the kind of silence that comes before a door opens the wrong way." The alley tightened. Rain grew finer, more like mist. She tasted metal on her tongue. She remembered a night when the piano had played as if it wanted to reach her through smoke. She remembered a hand that had not let go when the ceiling cracked. She shook the memory off and stood taller. "I do not owe men in black hats," she said. "Maybe you do not. Maybe someone thinks you do. Why tell me?" "Because I do not like the kind of men who like hurting women." He said it as if it cost him nothing, but it did. She could hear the history pressed inside the simple words. She could hear a trail. She could hear one soft voice he had not been able to save. It changed the air. It broke something open in her chest in a way that did not hurt. She took another step. The eaves cut the rain from her shoulders. They stood in the thin shelter where the saloon's back light turned drops to bright beads. She could see him more clearly. Strong hands, a small tear near the cuff, a clean shave done with a dull blade. A mouth that knew how to stay closed. "You carry a past," she said. "We all do. Yours is heavy. Some days, some nights, not right now." She laughed once, quiet. "Why not now?" "Because you are standing close enough that a man has to mind his breath." Silence rose, warm and terrifying. It sounded like a horse settling in straw. It sounded like a river under ice. Her heartbeat slowed to a deep drum. His gaze fell to her mouth and then lifted, patient, as if asking permission without a word. Lightning walked the far ridge. Thunder spoke low. "This is foolish," she said. "Yes, people will talk. They already do." We are strangers, not anymore. She felt the pull. It had nothing to do with need. It had everything to do with safety, which was a rarer hunger. She wanted to step closer and rest her forehead against his chest. She wanted to taste the rain on his lower lip and see if it could quiet the noise in her bones. She wanted to be brave in a way that did not require a weapon. A boot scraped at the mouth of the alley. A shape paused in the glow. Black hat. Tall. The kind of stillness that hides a blade. Gideon did not turn his head. He did not reach for the gun that hid beneath his coat. He looked only at Lark. "Do not be afraid," he said. "I am not good, because if we move now, we look like prey. What should we look like? Like sin the night forgives." Her breath caught. The rain thinned. The lamp behind them flickered, then steadied. She felt the moment decide. She reached up and laid her fingers on his jaw. Warm, strong. He closed his eyes once, as if the touch were a kind of absolution. When he opened them, they were darker. If this story has warmed a quiet corner of your heart, stay close. The night still holds more to tell. Let your presence be known. Your listening keeps this small fire alive for the next chapter. She rose to her toes and let the shadows hide them as she lifted her mouth toward his, and the alley held its breath as the man in the black hat took one step closer to the door of the Silver Spur, and the next part began to gather like thunder. The thunder didn't strike right away. It lingered, a low growl rolling across the mountains, the kind that made windows rattle and men go quiet. Inside the Silver Spur, the storm's voice slid through cracks in the old wood. Lamps trembled. Shadows moved. Lark didn't step back, neither did Gideon. The space between them had turned into something alive, something that asked without words. Her breath came slow, uncertain, almost prayerful. He could have kissed her. Every nerve in the air wanted him to. But he didn't. Instead, he lifted a hand and brushed the rain from her cheek with the back of his fingers. Slow. Careful. Reverent. "You should lock that door," he said softly. "I will." He didn't move. "And go home?" "I don't have one," she whispered. Something flickered in his eyes. A reflection of himself, maybe. A man who had been nowhere long enough that the word home had turned to dust on his tongue. "You'll need one," he said. "Do you have one?" He looked past her, at the lamplight through the saloon window, the amber hue of whiskey, the smoke rising slow. "I did once," he said. "Then I learned that walls don't keep ghosts out. They just make them louder." Her voice softened. "You talk like a man who's been burned." He smiled a little, not enough to reach his eyes. "Maybe I'm just a man who knows the smell of smoke." She almost smiled back. But then a gun clicked in the rain. The sound was soft, but it split the night clean in two. Gideon turned first. Quiet, fluid, like a coyote sensing a snare. The black-hatted stranger stood at the alley's mouth, revolver loose in his hand. He didn't hurry. The confident kind never did. "Evening," the man said. His voice carried the dust of long miles. Didn't mean to interrupt a prayer. Lark straightened, the ledger still in her grip. Gideon stepped half in front of her. His eyes stayed steady, but his right hand drifted closer to his coat. "No prayer," Gideon said. "Just rain." The man smirked. "Rain don't wash away everything, Trace." Lark's gaze flicked between them. "You know him?" Gideon didn't answer. Not yet. The stranger stepped closer, boots squelching through mud. Lightning showed the cut of his grin, white teeth, mean eyes. "Funny thing," he said. "You vanish for 3 years, and the first thing I hear when I ride into this town is your name, whispered by a saloon girl who doesn't know better." Lark's jaw tightened. "I know better than to listen to men who wear shadows for coats." That made him laugh, a dry, broken sound. "Pretty, too. Shame she's standing on your side, Trace. You've always had poor taste in luck." "Name your business," Gideon said. "Oh, I ain't here for business. Just curiosity." The gun tilted lazily. "The kind that gets folk killed." Lark's pulse jumped, but her voice didn't break. "If you plan to shoot, you'll wake half the town. Then I'll shoot quiet." He moved, fast. But Gideon moved faster. The revolver barked once. Flame, thunder, rain scattering in a golden burst. Gideon grabbed Lark, pulled her down behind the rain barrel. Wood splintered where the bullet struck. The alley filled with smoke and echo. Lark's breath came sharp against his neck. His arm stayed tight around her, firm, steady, grounding. She could feel his heartbeat through the wet fabric, slow as a drum, unafraid. "Stay here," he murmured. "You'll get killed." "I've been close before. Please, lock the door. When I say run, you run." She caught his sleeve. "You think I'm leaving you?" He looked at her, then, really looked. Something inside his chest shifted, dangerous and tender all at once. "I don't want your name written in his blood," he said. Before she could answer, he was gone, out of the shadows, into the rain. The gunfight was short, brutal, and beautiful in its own way. Lightning flared, thunder rolled, and somewhere between the two, Gideon became nothing but motion, a dark outline framed in white fire. When it ended, the black-hatted man lay still. Rain pooled around his boots. Lark ran to Gideon. Her hands found his shoulders first, searching for blood, for proof of life. His breath came steady. One scratch on his arm, nothing more. "You're insane," she whispered. "Maybe." He looked at her, rain clinging to his lashes, his mouth bruised by stormlight. "But you're safe." The words shouldn't have meant anything. They meant everything. She pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the warmth under his soaked shirt. "Why would you risk it?" "Because no one ever did for me." Her throat tightened. She wanted to thank him. She wanted to curse him. Instead, she leaned in, not to kiss, not quite, just close enough that the air between them burned like slow whiskey. The world around them blurred. The rain, the thunder, the fallen gun. Only breath and nearness remained. His hand rose, fingers tracing the curve of her jaw. "You said you didn't have a home," he whispered. "I don't." "Then maybe we're both ghosts," he said. "Trying to find the same light." Her voice barely reached him. "And if we do?" "Then the night won't end." He kissed her, finally, softly, as if the world might break from the weight of it. It wasn't hunger. It was relief. Two souls recognizing the same wound. The rain slowed. Somewhere the thunder rolled back toward the hills. But when he pulled away, his expression had changed. His eyes no longer looked at her. They looked past her, toward the saloon's dark window. "What is it?" she asked. "Someone else is watching," he said. "If this story has warmed a quiet corner of your heart, stay close. The desert night still has secrets to whisper. The next part is coming with the dawn's first light." The dawn came slow, shy behind a curtain of pale rain. The silver spur looked different in morning light, less wild, more weary. A place that had survived too many nights. Inside, the air still carried the scent of gunpowder and rain-soaked dust. Lark stood at the bar, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee gone cold. The piano in the corner leaned quiet, keys half forgotten beneath the weight of silence. She hadn't slept. Neither had Gideon. He sat near the back window, one shoulder bruised, shirt torn where the bullet had kissed his arm. The wound was shallow, but it bled enough to leave a memory. He cleaned it himself, wordless, the way a man does who has patched too many wounds to count. Lark watched him. The rain traced slow lines down the glass beside him. She thought of the kiss, the way it had felt both wrong and necessary, dangerous and safe. She tried to forget it, but her heartbeat refused to obey. "You're bleeding again," she said quietly. He looked up, half a smile pulling at his mouth. "I've had worse." "That's not comfort." He shrugged. "It's the truth." Lark set down the cup. "You said someone was watching." He nodded toward the window. "Last night?" "Just after—" He stopped there, and the silence filled the word kiss without needing to be spoken. Someone was standing near the water trough. Didn't move when the gun went off. Could have been a drunk. Could have been the wrong kind of sober. She frowned. "What do they want?" He leaned back, hat shadowing his eyes. "Could be the man in the black hat had company. Or maybe someone else thinks you're worth watching." "I don't like that." "Neither do I." A wagon rattled down Main Street outside. Boots echoed on wet boards. The sound made both of them glance toward the door. Lark caught herself reaching for the small pistol she kept beneath the counter. "You always keep that there?" he asked. "Only since my father died." He nodded once. "Good habit." She hesitated. "You keep a lot of habits, Gideon." "Only the ones that keep me breathing." Something about his voice, low, dry, with that trace of regret, made her chest ache. She wanted to ask about his past, but she knew better. Men like him carried their stories in scars, not words. Instead, she said softly, "You could have walked away last night." "I could have. But you didn't." He looked at her then, really looked. "No, I didn't." Lightning didn't flash this time. No thunder rolled. Just the quiet weight of two people realizing they were already too close to undo it. The door creaked. A woman stepped in. Long coat, black gloves, face shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. She moved with the sharp grace of someone who had never been ignored in her life. "Morning," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were searching. "I'm looking for a man named Gideon Trace." Lark's stomach tightened. Gideon didn't move, didn't blink. "You found him," he said. The woman's mouth curved. "So I did." She removed her gloves one finger at a time, slow as a sermon. "You left something unfinished in Santa Mesa." Lot of things unfinished in that town, Gideon said. You'll have to be more specific. Does the name Elias Ward mean anything to you? Lark saw something flicker in Gideon's eyes, a memory, quick and sharp, like a knife catching the light. Elias Ward is dead, he said quietly. That's what the papers say. The woman smiled without warmth. But the desert doesn't bury its ghosts so easy. Lark stepped closer. Who are you? Someone trying to make sure the right man hangs for the wrong blood, the woman said. And if Gideon Trace rides off before sundown, there'll be another grave waiting by the river. Gideon rose from the chair. You can tell whoever sent you that I'm not running any more. The woman tilted her head. Then you'd better pray the woman you're hiding behind is worth dying for. The room went still. Only the rain dared to move. Lark's hand closed around the pistol beneath the bar. If you think you can threaten me in my own saloon... The woman laughed once, low and cold. Sweetheart, I don't threaten. I promise. She turned for the door, water dripping from her hat brim. Sundown, Trace. After that, there's no mercy left. When she was gone, silence stayed like a wound. Lark finally breathed. Who was she? An old story, Gideon said. His voice was gravel. The kind that doesn't end where you want it to. You're saying she means what she said. I'm saying she doesn't bluff. Lark looked toward the window. The rain had stopped. The sky burned faint gold over the ridge. Somewhere, a bell tolled. What happens at sundown? She whispered. He met her eyes, steady and sorrowful. At sundown, ghosts come calling. And for the first time, Lark realized he wasn't talking about the woman at all. He was talking about himself. If this story has touched a quiet place in your heart, stay close. The day is only beginning, and the shadows of sundown hold more than thunder. The next part will ride in with the coming storm. The day crawled forward with the kind of silence that felt like waiting for a verdict. By noon, the sun hung white and hard over the town, burning the puddles dry and leaving behind the smell of dust and old blood. The silver spur stood open but empty, the piano mute, the air thick with what wasn't being said. Gideon sat at the bar, a glass of water in front of him, untouched. He stared at it as if it might tell him what kind of man he still was. Across the room, Lark swept the floor, even though it didn't need sweeping. Every scrape of the broom sounded like a question. When she couldn't stand it any more, she stopped. "You're thinking of running," she said. He looked up, slow. "If I were, I'd already be gone." "Then why are you still here?" He didn't answer right away. The light through the saloon doors fell across his face, soft and unforgiving. "Because running never fixed what I broke," he said. Lark set the broom aside. "You keep talking like a man who deserves to be hunted. What did you do?" His eyes found hers. "I believed the wrong man, Elias Ward." The name settled heavy between them. She remembered the woman's words, the right man hanging for the wrong blood. "What happened?" she asked. Gideon's hands tightened around the glass. "Ward and I rode together once, U.S. Marshals, back when the law still meant something to me. We chased a smuggler through Santa Mesa, a job gone bad, a fire in the desert, bodies that didn't belong to the guilty." Her voice softened. You took the blame. He nodded once. It was easier than watching her die. Her? He looked away. Ward's wife. Clara. Lark's breath caught. You were in love with her? I was foolish enough to think I was, he said. She was the light in a dark life, and I let her believe I'd killed her husband. But you didn't. No. His jaw tightened. Ward's alive. He's the ghost walking toward me tonight. Lark felt the floor tilt beneath her. The woman who came this morning, his sister, Gideon said. Grace Ward. She's his voice when he wants something done clean. And what does he want? He looked out the window. The sunlight had turned orange, already slipping toward dusk. Me on my knees, or in the ground? Lark moved closer. You could leave. There's still time before sundown. His voice dropped low. And leave you here when they come looking? She shook her head, eyes bright with anger. Don't make me the excuse for your death wish. He almost smiled, not out of mockery, but because she'd seen through him. You remind me of the kind of woman who doesn't pray for mercy, he said. I stopped praying the day I buried my father, she said. Mercy doesn't live out here. He rose from his chair. The movement was slow, heavy with purpose. He reached into his coat and laid a small silver badge on the counter. It caught the last beam of light and threw it back like a knife. Maybe not, he said, but justice might. She looked at the badge, tarnished, worn, real. You kept it all this time? It's all that's left of the man I used to be. Lark's voice trembled, not from fear, but from something deeper. And the man you are now? He met her eyes. He doesn't know if he's worth saving. Outside, the sun began to bleed into the horizon. The sky caught fire, gold, crimson, violet, all the colors of endings. A dog barked once and went quiet. The wind changed. Lark felt the shift before she saw it. The weight of sundown, the hush before something breaks. She stepped toward him. If you stay, you'll die. If I leave, so will the part of me that still believes in right. Her hand found his sleeve. You don't owe this town your death, Gideon. He looked down at her, and the faintest smile ghosted across his mouth. Maybe not. But I owe you the truth. He lifted her chin with 2 fingers, gentle. When that gun went off last night, and you reached for me, I stopped wanting to disappear. Her breath faltered. And what do you want now? He hesitated, long enough that the answer hurt before it came. To live long enough to see your eyes in daylight again. The clock above the bar struck 6. A single bell. Outside, boots echoed on the wooden walk. 1 pair, slow, purposeful. Lark's voice broke the silence. He's here. Gideon turned toward the door. I know. The light through the windows went gold, then red, then gone. He touched her hand once, brief and warm, the kind of touch meant to be remembered. Stay inside, he said. And if you don't come back? He looked over his shoulder, eyes steady as dusk. Then remember that I meant every word. The saloon doors creaked open, letting in the dying light. Gideon stepped through, into the heart of sundown, where the past waited with a loaded gun and a name that still bled. If this story has stirred a quiet ache in your heart, stay close. The desert wind carries what happens next. The night has just begun, and the storm is coming for them both. The street was empty but for the wind. It dragged dust along the boards, whispered through broken shutters, and wrapped itself around the man waiting at the far end of the road. Elias Ward. He stood tall beneath the dying sun, hat low, coat dark as sin. The years had carved him sharper, colder, a man rebuilt from vengeance and whiskey. The scar along his neck caught the last of the light like a thin blade. When Gideon stepped out from the saloon, the two men faced each other in silence. 10 paces between them. 10 years of ghosts. "You took your time?" Ward called, his voice dry as sand. "I wasn't sure you'd wait." Ward smiled, small, cruel. "Oh, I've been waiting, Gideon." "Since the night the fire took everything that was mine." Gideon's jaw flexed. "You took that fire to yourself. You lied to her. You lied to all of us. Truth never mattered to the dead. You're not dead. Not yet." Ward's hand hovered near his holster. "But one of us will be before the moon's full." Gideon's voice stayed low, even. "You could walk away. So could you." They both knew neither would. Lark stood inside the saloon, pressed against the doorway. The lamplight behind her painted her shadow long across the floorboards. She could see them, 2 shapes against the dying day, carved from everything she feared and everything she couldn't stop feeling. She wanted to run out there, to scream, to make it stop, but she knew better. Men like that didn't stop for words. Outside, the sky turned to fire, then the world went still. Ward's fingers twitched. Gideon's did not. The sound came sharp, 1 gunshot, then 2. Smoke twisted through the evening like a ghost learning to breathe. For a heartbeat, neither man moved. Then Ward stumbled. The revolver fell from his hand and landed in the dust with a hollow sound. He pressed a hand to his side, eyes wide with disbelief, blood blooming dark through his coat. "You always were faster," he rasped. "No," Gideon said, lowering his weapon. "Just tired of running." Ward laughed once, a sound like breaking glass, then fell to his knees. Gideon caught him before he hit the ground. "Why?" Ward whispered. "Why not finish it?" "Because I already did," Gideon said. "A long time ago." Ward's eyes flickered. "Clara?" "She's gone," Gideon said softly. "She never knew the truth." Ward's breath hitched. "Then maybe she waits for me after all." And then he was still. The last of the sun slipped behind the hills. The street filled with quiet, the kind that doesn't comfort, only reminds. Gideon sat back on his heels, eyes closed. The wind moved through town again, carrying the smell of gun smoke and rain. Lark pushed through the saloon doors and ran to him. Her boots splashed through mud and blood. She knelt beside him, fingers trembling as she reached for his face. "He's dead?" Gideon nodded. She looked at the gun still in his hand. "And what about you?" He set it down in the dirt. "I'm still here, for now." She touched his shoulder, careful, reverent. "You don't look like a man who won." He gave a faint smile. "That's because I didn't." She searched his face, and what she saw made her chest tighten. Not just exhaustion, but sorrow worn thin. a man who'd carried too much weight for too long. "Come inside," she said. "You need to rest." He looked toward the saloon, its windows glowing gold against the night. "You sure I belong there?" "I'm sure you do now." They walked together through the doors. Inside, the lamps flickered, and the piano caught a single note from the wind. Lark poured whiskey into 2 glasses and handed him one. "To endings," she said. He lifted the glass, eyes on hers. "To whatever comes after." They drank. The warmth spread slow, soft, the kind that didn't burn, just lingered. Outside, thunder rolled again over the plains, the kind that promised another storm. Lark set her glass down. "You'll have to leave, won't you?" "Soon," he said. "Men like me don't get to stay." She took a breath, quiet but certain. "Then stay until morning." He looked at her, at the way the lamplight caught in her hair, the steadiness in her eyes. He wanted to refuse. He couldn't. "Just till morning," he said. And when she reached for his hand, he didn't pull away. The fire in the hearth popped softly, a single ember rising into the dark. They sat in silence, the space between them filled with what hadn't been said yet: warmth, danger, forgiveness. Gideon watched the flame, voice low. "You ever wonder if peace is real, Lark?" She smiled faintly. "Maybe it's not something we find. Maybe it's something we share, for as long as the night allows." He turned his hand beneath hers, fingers lacing with hers, slow, careful, like a man relearning how to hold something precious. Outside, rain began again, soft, steady, cleansing. And under its rhythm, the world seemed to breathe. If this story has warmed a quiet corner of your heart, stay close. The night still holds more to tell. Their fire isn't out yet, and the dawn may bring more than peace. The rain came heavier before dawn. It beat against the windows of the Silver Spur like a confession, steady and relentless. The fire had burned down to coals, the light low and orange, painting the room in soft wounds of warmth. Lark sat at the edge of the table, hair loose, eyes hollow, from a night without rest. She watched Gideon, who had fallen asleep in the chair across from her, one arm slung over the back, hat tilted low. Even in sleep, he looked ready for war. For the first time, she saw the boy that must have lived beneath the man, the kind who once believed the world could be better. She almost reached out to touch his hand, to make sure he was real, but stopped. Some tendernesses are better kept in silence. The storm deepened. Wind whistled through the cracks in the saloon walls, carrying the scent of wet sage and distant thunder. Gideon stirred, eyes opening slow. The grey in them matched the sky outside. "Morning?" he asked, voice rough with sleep. "Barely," she said. "The rain's been talking all night." He smiled faintly. "I heard it. Thought it might drown out the ghosts for a while." "Did it?" He shook his head. "They're louder in the quiet." She poured coffee into a tin cup, handed it to him. Their fingers brushed, a small, accidental mercy. "What happens now?" she asked. He looked toward the window where the storm made the world disappear. "Now I bury a man who tried to kill me, and then I leave before his sister decides to finish the job." Lark's breath caught. "Grace Ward won't stop." "She's got reason not to," Gideon said. "I took her brother. Doesn't matter that he drew first. You could explain." Some things can't be explained, he said softly. Only carried. The thunder cracked again, sharp and close. Somewhere outside, a horse whinnied in fear. Lark went still. "That's not the wind," she said. Gideon was already standing. He moved to the window, parted the curtain with 2 fingers. Out in the street, shapes moved through the rain. 3 riders, dark against the flash of lightning. "They're early," he murmured. Lark's pulse quickened. "Grace?" He nodded. "And friends." "What do they want?" He turned, calm and grave. "Me." "But they'll burn this place down if it means smoking me out." Lark reached under the bar and drew the pistol she'd kept there since her father's death. Her hands didn't shake. "Then they'll have to come through me first." He looked at her, truly looked, and something like pride crossed his face. "You're not the kind who hides, are you?" "Not any more." He walked toward her, took her wrist gently, lowering the gun. "If they kill me, it won't fix anything. If they kill you, I won't have anything left worth fighting for." Her throat tightened. "Then we fight together." A crack of thunder shook the roof. The door rattled. The riders dismounted. "Inside!" a woman's voice shouted, clear, cold, commanding. "Trace, you had your chance at sundown. Now I'm done asking." Grace Ward. Gideon's jaw tightened. "Stay behind the bar," he whispered. She didn't. The door burst open under the force of a boot. Rain poured in behind Grace as she stepped through, revolver drawn, eyes burning like the edge of a forge. 2 men followed, faceless in the dark. Lark raised her gun. Grace's gaze flicked to her, unflinching. "Don't," she said. "You're not who I came for." "I'm who you'll have to get through." Grace's eyes softened, almost pitying. "You think he's a savior. He's not. He left my brother to die in fire." "He tried to save him," Lark said. Grace laughed, sharp and bitter. "You weren't there." "No," Gideon said quietly, stepping forward. "But I was." He moved between them, unarmed. The storm howled through the open doorway. "You want justice, Grace. Take it. But don't make another ghost." She hesitated, gun trembling just enough for the truth to slip through. "You think this is justice?" "I think it's grief," he said. "And I've had enough of it to know it never ends the way you want." A flash of lightning lit the room. For a moment, the world went white. When the thunder hit, a gun fired. Then another. Lark screamed his name. The sound of rain swallowed everything else. She found him on the floor, breath ragged, blood dark beneath his coat. Grace stood frozen, gun still in her hand, horror on her face. "I didn't," she started. Lark was already beside him, pressing her hands to the wound, tears mixing with rain. "Stay with me, Gideon. Please." His eyes found hers, faint smile breaking through the pain. "Looks like the night finally caught up." "Don't you dare," she whispered. "Don't you dare leave me." He lifted a trembling hand, brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. "Lark," he breathed, "if there's peace in this world, I think it sounds like your voice." Grace stepped back, eyes wide, gun lowering. "He wasn't supposed to—" "Go," Lark said, voice shaking with fury. "Go before I make you pay for what's left of him." Grace turned and fled into the storm. The thunder swallowed her. Lark bent low, pressing her forehead to Gideon's chest. His heartbeat was weak but steady. "You're going to live," she whispered. "You have to." He smiled faintly. "Guess I've always been too stubborn to quit." Outside, the storm broke into soft rain. The fire crackled back to life, small and fragile, like a promise trying to be reborn. She held him close as dawn began to paint the sky with silver. If this story has touched a quiet place in your heart, stay near. The desert dawn still carries their breath, and the next part waits where pain begins to heal. The storm left behind a world scrubbed raw and new. The streets glistened beneath the soft grey light, and every rooftop shone with water like glass. Inside the silver spur, the fire was small but steady again, a stubborn glow that refused to die. Gideon lay on a cot near the hearth. His coat had been peeled away, shirt cut open to the ribs. The wound on his shoulder was deep, but not mortal. The bullet had torn through, clean. He was lucky, or maybe just not finished yet. Lark sat beside him, a bowl of water and bandages on the table. Her hair was tied back, face pale but fierce. Every time she pressed the cloth against his skin, he flinched, but didn't pull away. "You should rest," she whispered. "I've been resting," he said, voice gravel low. "You haven't closed your eyes since last night." "I will when you stop bleeding." He smiled, small, crooked. "You talk like you think I'll listen." She wrung the cloth, dipped it again. "If you die on me, Gideon Trace, I'll find you in whatever afterlife cowards go to and drag you back." "That sounds like heaven." "Don't joke." He caught her wrist, his fingers warm despite the fever creeping under his skin. "You're crying," he said softly. She didn't notice until then. Her tears had mixed with the water, fallen soundless into the bowl. She tried to wipe them away with the back of her hand, but he held it. "I'm fine, Lark," he said. She looked at him, really looked, and for a moment anger and love blurred into one unbearable ache. "No," she whispered, "you're not. You're bleeding for ghosts that stopped caring years ago." He closed his eyes. "Maybe I'm just trying to pay what I owe." "And what about what you owe yourself?" His breath hitched, not from pain this time. He opened his eyes again, and something in them had changed. "You sound like someone who's loved a broken man before," she smiled through her tears. "Only one, and I'm not done yet." He turned his hand in hers, fingers lacing with hers, slow, deliberate. "You shouldn't love me. Too late." Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, pale gold spilling across the desert. It filled the room with a quiet warmth, painting their faces in light. He watched her. "What happens when I have to ride?" "Then you ride," she said. "But not before you can sit a saddle without bleeding through your shirt." He laughed, the first real laugh she'd heard from him. It was soft, raw, almost startled, like a man remembering what it felt like. "That's an order?" he asked. "That's a promise," she said. For a long while, neither spoke. The fire popped once. Wind sighed through the broken door. Somewhere outside, a rooster crowed, late, lazy. "You know," she said, voice almost playful, "you owe me for the whiskey you spilled last night." "I'll pay you double," he said. "With what money?" He lifted a brow. "Guess I'll have to work it off." She arched an eyebrow. "Doing what?" "Whatever keeps me here a little longer." Her throat tightened. She turned away to hide the blush rising under her skin. "You talk too much for a wounded man." He smiled. "You listen too close for someone pretending not to care." The door creaked. Both turned their heads. A figure stood at the threshold, small, hunched, wrapped in a shawl, an old woman, skin weathered by years of dust and wind. "Lark Hollis," she said, her voice like dry sage. "The doctor's gone north. Heard there was trouble. Came to see who's still standing." Lark rose. "He needs help." The old woman stepped forward, eyes sharp. "He's lucky. Bullet missed the bone, but he'll carry the ache when the rain comes." Gideon smiled faintly. "I'll take that over the alternative." The woman gave him a look. "Men like you always do. You've got the kind of eyes that never stop looking back." Lark frowned. "He's not the man he used to be." The old woman nodded slowly. "Then let him prove it." She packed herbs, stitched the wound with sure hands, and left without another word, disappearing into the light. Silence returned. Lark leaned close again, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "Does it hurt?" "Not where it used to," he said. Her lips curved into something between a smile and a tremor. "You think you'll ever stop chasing the past?" He looked at her. "Maybe I already have." For a moment, neither moved. The world outside waited, soft and endless. The desert smelled clean, new. Then, without thinking, she leaned down and kissed him. Slow, tender, nothing like the first. It wasn't born of fire or fear this time. It was born of quiet, of breath, of staying. When she pulled back, he whispered, "If I wake, and this is gone." "It won't be," she said. "Not as long as you keep breathing." He smiled against her hand. "Guess I've got reason enough now." Outside, the rain began to fade, leaving behind a promise written in gold light and wet dust. If this story has touched something soft in your heart, stay close. The sun may be rising, but the night still remembers. And the next part waits in the shadow of what they've begun to feel. By evening, the desert had turned to gold again. The storm left everything washed clean. Even the air felt new, sharp with the scent of wet mesquite and horse sweat. The silver spur stood quiet, its windows glowing soft in the last light of day. Lark watched Gideon from across the room. He was sitting up now, coat back on, hat tilted low, the wound on his shoulder wrapped tight beneath his shirt. He looked more alive than he had the night before, and somehow further away. "You're thinking about leaving," she said. He didn't deny it. "Thinking's all I've been doing. You could just stay." He looked at her then, eyes the color of storm clouds that hadn't decided whether to break. "I could. But every time I stay, trouble finds me. I don't want that finding you." She crossed her arms, standing tall in the fading light. "You think you get to choose for both of us?" He gave a quiet, rueful smile. "Someone should have warned me how stubborn you are." "They probably tried. You just don't listen." He chuckled once, then winced as pain pulled at his stitches. Lark stepped forward instantly, instinctively, hand brushing his arm. "Easy," she said. Her touch stopped him. Soft, unplanned, dangerous. He looked up at her, really looked. And for a heartbeat, he wasn't the hunted man anymore. He was just a man, tired, wanting, found. "Lark," he said quietly, "you deserve something steady, not a ghost in a borrowed coat." She shook her head. "You keep calling yourself a ghost, but ghosts don't bleed. Ghosts don't fight to stay." He swallowed hard. "And what if I don't know how to stay? Then I'll teach you." The room went still. The words hung there like smoke between them, fragile and fearless. He stood, slow, steady on his feet. The firelight found his face, softening the hard lines that the years had carved. When he spoke, his voice was low enough to tremble. "If I let myself want that, I won't be able to leave." "Good." Her reply was a whisper, but it carried the weight of truth. He took a step closer, and another, until the space between them was small enough that her breath brushed his throat. The silence broke with the sound of the wind pushing through the open door, dry, warm, smelling of dust and far-off rain. He reached out, fingers brushing her jaw, her lips parted, not from fear, but from the deep ache of recognition. "I don't want to lose you," she said. "You already have me," he whispered. Then he kissed her. Not gentle this time, but real, desperate, as if all the years of running had led him right here, to her, to this single, fragile truth. Her hands rose to his face, pulling him closer. The room seemed to fade, the fire, the walls, even the weight of everything that had come before. There was only breath, heartbeat, heat. When they finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "Does this feel like trouble?" she murmured. He smiled, eyes closed. "Feels like peace trying to disguise itself." Outside, thunder rolled faintly again, distant like an old promise returning. Gideon's hand slid to the back of her neck, thumb tracing her skin, and for a moment she thought he might finally let himself rest. But then, a knock at the door. Not loud, not hurried. Just enough to break the quiet clean in half. They froze. Gideon's eyes opened, hard again. The world returned. "Stay here," he said. "Not this time." "Lark!" She was already reaching for the gun beneath the counter. "If someone means to end this, they'll have to speak to both of us." He hesitated, the kind of hesitation that holds both pride and fear. Then he nodded. He opened the door. A young deputy stood there, hat in his hands, face drawn and rain-streaked. His voice carried the weight of the plains. "Trace," he said, "you've got to come with me." "Why?" The boy swallowed. "Grace Ward's dead, shot an hour ago out near Dry Creek." Lark's breath caught. "What?" The deputy nodded. "Sheriff says there's one witness, claimed you did it." The air went still. Gideon's jaw tightened. "That's a lie." "I believe you," the deputy said. "But the sheriff doesn't. He's raising a posse at dawn." Gideon looked past him, out toward the desert. Endless, golden, merciless. The wind carried the promise of another storm. He turned back to Lark. Her eyes were wide, shining, fierce. "Don't you dare run," she said. He brushed a thumb along her cheek. "If I stay, they'll hang me before I can say a word. And if you go, I'll never see you again." He didn't answer, because both were true. The deputy shifted, uneasy. "You've got till sunrise," he said. Then he turned and rode into the fading light. Gideon stood there, silent. The horizon burned red. Lark stepped closer, voice trembling. "What are you going to do?" He looked at her, at everything he'd found, everything he could lose. "Ride," he said quietly, "but this time not alone. If this story has warmed a quiet corner of your heart, stay close. The dawn will bring pursuit, and the desert's breath still has truths left to tell." The first light hadn't yet broken when they left town. The desert stretched wide and silver under a sky still half asleep, stars fading slow behind a thin veil of mist. The air was cold enough to taste. Every hoofbeat on wet sand sounded louder than it should have, a rhythm between heartbeat and prayer. Lark rode close beside him, her shawl pulled tight, the colt resting at her hip. Gideon's horse was dark and steady beneath him, the kind that had seen too much dust to spook at ghosts. Neither of them spoke for a long while. When he finally did, his voice was low, roughened by wind. "You shouldn't have come. And leave you to die for something you didn't do? You think it's the first time they've tried to hang a man for another's sins?" "I don't care what they've done before," she said. "This time, it's mine too." He turned his head, met her eyes. "You don't owe me that." "I don't owe you anything," she said, "and that's why I'm here." The dawn cracked the horizon open, a thin wound of gold spreading over the desert. Shadows shrank, color returned. Lark watched it with a strange ache in her chest. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Always is before it burns you," Gideon said. She looked at him, at the tired lines around his eyes, the way the light brushed the edges of his jaw. "You ever get tired of expecting the worst?" "Only when I start wanting the best." He said it like a confession, not a joke. They rode until the ridge fell away into open plain. From there, the desert stretched for miles. Soft dunes, dry rivers, a horizon that seemed to breathe. Gideon slowed his horse, turned in the saddle, scanning the distance behind them. "They'll be coming soon," he said. "Sheriff knows I won't run far." "Then we don't stop," she said. He smiled faintly. "You talk like you've done this before." "I've been running my whole life, just never with someone worth running for." He stared at her for a moment, and in that look she felt something shift, something dangerous and alive. "You think I'm worth that?" he asked. "I think you've already proved it." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of everything they hadn't said, everything they didn't know how to. When they reached a dry creek bed, he pulled the reins and dismounted. "We'll stop here," he said. Lark slid down beside him. "For how long?" "Long enough to think." She laughed softly. "You think?" He smiled, small but real. "You'd be surprised." He crouched, pulling a folded paper from his coat. The edges were torn, the ink faded. He handed it to her. "It's proof," he said. "A letter from a marshal in Santa Mesa. Clears my name. Ward stole the evidence before he burned the station." She looked up sharply. "Then this could save you." "It could," he said, "but the sheriff won't believe it without the seal." "Then we find whoever can vouch for it." "Lark." "No," she said firmly. "You've been paying for other people's lies long enough." He studied her. The stubborn set of her mouth, the strength in her eyes. "You're dangerous when you start believing in something." "Maybe I learned from the best." He laughed under his breath. "You shouldn't have." They sat together on the creek bank. The world was quiet again. No wind, no thunder, just the steady hum of life returning after the storm. After a while she asked softly, "What happens if they catch us?" He didn't answer right away. "Then I hang," he said finally, "and they write a story that ain't true." She turned to him. "And if we make it, then maybe the world gets to know who Gideon Trace really was. I already do." Her voice trembled, but her gaze didn't. He reached out, cupped her cheek with his palm. "You've got a way of making a man believe he's worth saving. Maybe because you are." Their foreheads touched. For a long moment, neither moved. Her fingers brushed his hand, then slid to his chest, feeling the slow, steady rhythm there. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "If I make it out of this, Lark Hollis, I'm done running." "Then stop running now," she whispered. He kissed her, deep this time, unhurried, the kind of kiss that felt like it might rewrite the ending of every story that came before. But the sound of horses cut through the quiet, sharp, echoing off the canyon walls. Lark pulled away, eyes wide. "They've found us." Gideon stood, loading his revolver with quick, sure hands. "Get to the ridge." "Stay low. I'm not leaving you." "You are if I tell you to." Her voice broke. "Gideon." He turned, eyes soft now, almost tender. "You said you'd teach me how to stay. This is me learning." Before she could argue, he pressed something into her palm, the folded letter, warm from his coat. "Keep it," he said. "If I don't walk out of this, make sure the truth does." She shook her head, tears already burning her throat. "Don't you dare talk like that." He smiled faintly. "Then you better make me a reason to come back." The first shot cracked the air, far off, but getting closer. He stepped forward, gun in hand, silhouette framed by the rising sun. Dust swirled around him like smoke, like memory. Lark watched him go, every step a prayer she couldn't bring herself to say out loud. If this story has reached the wild edge of your heart, stay close. The desert wind is gathering, and the final reckoning rides with the dawn. The sun broke clean over the ridge, slicing gold across the desert. Dust rose like ghosts behind the riders thundering toward them. 6 men, rifles glinting, faces carved from anger and duty. The sheriff rode at the front, his coat flapping like a flag of final judgment. Gideon stood his ground in the open flat. Behind him, the dry creek shimmered with the last of the morning mist. The air was still, heavy with the smell of sweat, gun oil, and the end of running. He heard her voice before he saw her. "Don't do this alone, Gideon." Lark had climbed the ridge instead of hiding behind it. The light caught her hair, turned it to fire. She held his old rifle in her hands, like it belonged there. He shook his head. "I told you to stay back. And I told you I don't take orders from dead men." He almost smiled. "You've got a way with words, Lark Hollis. And you've got a bad habit of getting shot." The riders slowed, spreading out in a crescent. The sheriff lifted a hand. "Gideon Trace, you're under arrest for the murder of Grace Ward. Drop your weapon." Gideon raised his voice, steady, low, meant to be heard. "You've got the wrong man." "Tell that to the witnesses," the sheriff said. "I brought proof," Lark shouted, holding up the folded letter. "Signed by Marshal Dorsey of Santa Mesa. Gideon was cleared 3 years ago. It was Ward who set him up." The sheriff frowned. "You expect me to take a woman's word for it?" "You should," Gideon said, voice cutting like steel. She's the only one here who still believes truth is worth dying for." The sheriff dismounted, reached for the letter. He unfolded it slow, eyes scanning the faded ink. When he looked up, something like shame flickered in his face. "This could have saved you, Trace," he said quietly, "if you'd handed it over before." "I didn't trust the kind of men who wear justice like a badge and use it like a gun," Gideon said. The posse shifted uneasily. The wind carried the low cry of a hawk overhead. Then, from behind the sheriff's men, another voice rose. Thin, familiar, cruel. "You talk too much, Trace." Gideon froze. From the back of the line rode a man wrapped in dust and hatred, hat pulled low, left arm bandaged, eyes burning pale blue. Elias Ward, alive. Lark's breath caught in her throat. "That's impossible." Ward smiled, teeth red at the edges. "You should have finished the job in Santa Mesa." The sheriff turned, startled. "Ward, they said you—" "Died?" Ward spat. "That was the plan. Trace here made it easy." He drew, fast as the devil, firing before anyone could think. The bullet grazed the sheriff's arm, spinning him off balance. Gideon moved on instinct, shoving Lark behind the rocks, gun already up. The world shrank to sound and motion. Fire, echo, dust. 2 shots. 3. When the smoke cleared, Ward was on his knees, gun falling from his hand. Gideon's chest heaved, his arm bleeding fresh again. Ward looked up, hatred fading to something smaller, almost human. "You think this makes you clean?" he rasped. "No," Gideon said. "Just free." Ward tried to lift his gun again. Lark fired once. The shot rang true. The desert went silent. The sheriff's men stood still, staring. No one spoke. No one moved. Lark lowered the rifle, her hands trembling. "It's over." Gideon stepped to her, gently taking the gun from her grasp. "You shouldn't have had to do that." She met his eyes. Wet, fierce. "Neither should you." The sheriff came closer, hat in hand. "You've got your truth now, Trace. I'll see to it the record reads right this time." Gideon nodded once. "That's all I ever wanted." He turned to Lark, the morning light catching his face. Tired, lined, but alive. "Maybe now we can start with something that isn't running." She smiled through her tears. "And what would that be?" He looked out across the desert, where the sky burned clear and endless. "Peace, maybe." "If you'll help me learn how." Her fingers found his, threading together slow. "Then we start today." The wind rose, soft and warm. The last of the posse rode back toward town, leaving the 2 of them alone in the open. Gideon looked at her, at the woman who had become his compass through the dark. "You ever wonder," he said, "why the storms always sound like they're talking?" She tilted her head, smiling faintly. "Maybe they are." "What do they say?" "That the worst things we've done don't have to be the last things we are." He reached for her hand again, pressing it to his chest where his heartbeat still fought to stay steady. "Then maybe this is how peace begins," he said. "One breath at a time." She leaned in, resting her head against him. The desert stretched out before them, wild and endless, but for once it felt like home. The firelight of morning washed over them, soft and golden. Somewhere a new wind carried away the sound of old sins, and the west for a moment was quiet. If this story has touched a tender place in your heart, let your light stay with us. Comment, share, and subscribe so this Western fire keeps burning for you.